Welcome to Recovery APN. My name is Dan, and I'm joined by my co-host, Andy.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Before we get into today's episode, I figured we'd introduce ourselves and then give some background about today's episode.
All right. So I am Andy. I am our alumni director here at All Points North Lodge. I've worked at All Points Lodge since 2019. I've had the opportunity to see it grow from 10 clients to at 70 now, where we have detox and all, and just this beautiful campus that offers different modalities, and just seeing people recover from 2019 till now has just been it's been awesome. And I'm just excited to be on the show with you, Dan, and get this thing going.
Yeah, absolutely. And to give some information about myself, I'm fortunate enough to be on Andy's team, the alumni team here at APN. I was fortunate enough also to be a client at APN. So it's going to be my privilege to be one of the co-hosts on this podcast to talk about the alumni program, but also talk to other alumni that had the experience that I had at the lodge.
Like the recovery world's like Paradoxville, right? You gotta give it away to keep it. You gotta surrender to win. It's like it goes against everything. Like, hey, you don't give in. A man doesn't give in. All the bull crap. Right. Hey, we're tough and give up, man. Get it. It's not in your. Like, let it go. Like me in charge. I was in rehab as a 30-year-old. That was me in charge of my life. I crashed it.
The incredible thing about being in process groups was being able to share my experience and feeling so validated. Like, what I was going through was real. What I was going through was understandable and was hard and was real trauma, and trauma is different for everyone.
I had an extremely traumatic childhood. And what I learned was the character defects I was still running on, the other addictions that kept popping up, they were trauma responses to life. I was clinging on to something to navigate my own trauma.
It was the lowest I've ever felt in my entire life. And there was one particular day where I was laying on the couch completely wasted, crying because I didn't want to do this anymore. I didn't have a choice. I had no control. I was surviving. I wanted to love my kids. I wanted to hug my husband. I wanted to function.
Yeah.
And I literally couldn't.
Yeah.
I had no choice. And there was like this one half-second moment of clarity, and I opened my eyes. And it was chaos, and I was like, I can't do this anymore.
I remember coming back out, and I built really good relationships here, and so much shame and anxiety built up. And I remember pulling up to the lodge, and Tom, who was an RE here, just met my car and gave me the biggest bear hug. And it was just this sense of like, like this was the right choice. Yeah. And I remember being, in the assessment wing, and every staff member stopped by my room and gave me a hug and said, I'm so glad you're back. Oh. And that concept of like,
that's awesome. I'm
so glad you're back. At first I was like, wait, you're glad I drank? Yeah. And in the end, it was this message of like, you could have ended up in jail.
Yeah.
You could have died. Instead, you're here.
First off, they told us, like, once we left, once you leave APN, you get back into the real world, and it's not as easy as people think, right? And so the things that you do learn, you're going to have to apply them right away. And so one of the things that I learned was positive self-talk and, the breathing exercises, and then also meditation, because I got in a state when I left of being in a place where I was becoming like irritable again. Mm-hmm. And I had to practice those things that I learned, and also continued therapy.
I get uncomfortable when things are good. Yeah. Okay. I am most in my comfort zone when things are not going so well, when it's a little bit iffy. That's that's home for me, right? And so when things start to get going good, I'm like, what's going to happen now? And I think some of this goes back to like when I was coming out of these flashbacks and things, I'd become so used to feeling this anxiety inside me that was ever present. When it started to go away, it got like I would get scared. It'd be like, wait, I feel too good, right? I feel too good. So it kind of became like a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, right? Where I was like, I'm only okay when I'm in this, when I'm captivated by this.
I never assumed it would be harder to open up I guess, mentally or even emotionally than, 2-a-days in Louisiana.
Sure.
Or, facing a double team. This is the way when I was here, we talked about, hey, this is like training camp, but, times 2 mentally. So it's something that unless you experience it yourself, you wouldn't have a true understanding. Unless you experience yourself, you wouldn't have the feeling of, I can get better. Yeah. I may not get better tomorrow, but there's a point in time where, as long as I take one step at a time, I'm getting better.
I think the best part about working in the alumni program is we get to see these like success stories, right? And the hope that recovery can bring. And, people come in broken and beaten, and we see them after they're here doing the deep work, and we see their lives put together, right? So we're lucky and grateful to have this job and have to witness the growth in our alumni. And I'm excited to do this podcast and talk to our alumni and see where they're at and see what they've learned. And doing this with you on the journey, where knowing where you were at and seeing where you're at now, it's just been inspirational.
Yeah. When I think of this podcast and I kind of think back to my experience at APN, I think my goal and the vision I have for it is to provide guidance, hope, any expertise, my experience that I had,
absolutely,
as well as the alumni that will be joining us.
Yeah.
Right. For them to come share their stories, whether it was before they were at the lodge, their experience at the lodge, and then what their life has become afterwards, and to give the individuals that are currently at the lodge now seeking treatment, and giving them the ability to listen.
Absolutely.
Is very unique, right? I don't think a lot of treatment centers out there can do that.